Astronomers tend to speak carefully. They rely on numbers, margins of error, models that behave. But when those numbers turn into probabilities, the tone shifts. And with 3i Atlas, the shift is striking, 60%. That's the figure now passed around in late-night observatories, tucked quietly into research papers. A 60% chance that something unexpected, not minor, not subtle, but truly unusual, is about to unfold. Since you and I are sharing this journey tonight, let me pause for just a moment. If the cosmos sparks your curiosity, tap that like button and let me know where in the world you're listening from. I'm still amazed that this quiet channel gathers curious minds from every corner of the globe. Commuters in New York, night owls in Sao Paulo, dreamers in Tokyo. All of us looking up at the same sky and tonight at the same mystery. But what does unexpected even mean in astronomy? Could it be a sudden brightening like a comet breaking apart into dazzling streams of dust? A course change that hints at hidden forces tugging at its frozen heart? Or something stranger still, something that doesn't fit into the usual language of comets and asteroids at all? It's that uncertainty that pulls us in, because 60% is not a long shot. It's not wishful speculation. It's a coin toss tilted toward mystery. And that means every telescope on Earth is leaning toward this object. Every model is being recalculated, and every astronomer is wondering, what if? Back to 3i Atlas. From the start, it seemed like an echo of Oumuamua, the first interstellar object that slipped past us in 2017. A fleeting visitor, here for a brief encounter before vanishing back into the dark between stars. But the story is unraveling differently this time. Oumuamua was strange enough. Its cigar-like shape, its strange acceleration. But 3i Atlas is stranger still. Its light curve doesn't make sense. As it rotates, the brightness should rise and fall in a steady rhythm, the way a lighthouse beam sweeps across the horizon. Instead, its flickering is sharp, irregular, almost agitated. Its orbit bends ever so slightly in ways that gravity alone doesn't explain. Outgassing, the natural release of gas and dust as ice warms in sunlight, might be a factor. But even that doesn't line up with the models. It's as though the object is listening to forces we don't yet see. Imagine standing on a shoreline and watching a ship glide past. You expect its sails to fill with wind, its keel to cut the water in a predictable line, and then suddenly it veers slightly, as though pulled by something under the waves. You don't see the current, but you know it's there. That is how astronomers feel right now. And it brings us to the real heart of the matter. What could cause this? One possibility is simple fragmentation. A hidden weakness in its icy core could crack open, venting jets of gas that nudge it off its predicted path. Another possibility is capture. The faint but growing suggestion that 3i Atlas might not be leaving at all, that the sun's gravity has claimed it in a way no one foresaw. But there's also a third path, one harder to explain. What if the unexpected isn't physical at all, but observational? What if the reason it doesn't behave like a comet is because it isn't one? That whisper has followed 3i Atlas from the moment it was discovered. The 60% chance doesn't settle the question, it sharpens it. If you knew a coin toss would land in mystery more often than not, wouldn't you want to watch every spin? That's what makes 3i Atlas more than just a frozen fragment from another star. It's a mirror for our own curiosity, forcing us to ask how much of what we see in the universe is truly known, and how much is still waiting to surprise us. And so the story begins not with certainty, but with possibility. With a visitor we thought would simply pass us by, but which now seems determined to linger. With a probability high enough to keep every eye fixed on the heavens. And with the haunting thought that maybe, just maybe, we are on the edge of witnessing something our species has never seen before. The thing about probability is that it sounds neat and tidy on paper, but in reality, it's messy. When scientists say there's a 60% chance of something unexpected, it doesn't mean they know what's coming. It means the models are straining, the predictions are splitting into different paths, and the future is no longer clear. And that makes 3I Atlas a kind of cosmic dice roll, one played out in slow motion across the night sky. Astronomers are cautious by nature. They don't like mystery for mystery's sake. Every irregularity, every wobble in the data demands an explanation. Yet with 3I Atlas, the explanations keep slipping away. When the first orbital models came in, the expectation was simple. It would sweep past the sun, flare briefly, and vanish into deep space once more. That's what comets do. That's what Oumuamua did. But this one lingers. Its trajectory bends slightly, almost reluctantly, as though it doesn't want to leave. And then there's the matter of its brightness. With most comets, sunlight strikes the ice, releasing gases that reflect light in a predictable rhythm. But 3I Atlas doesn't flicker like that. Instead, its glow pulses in strange intervals, as if parts of it are waking up while others remain silent. It's not steady, it's restless. Some astronomers have compared it to a broken engine sputtering on and off, never quite failing, never quite stable. This restlessness is what fuels the speculation. If the object were simply breaking apart, we'd expect a dramatic flare, a burst of light and a trailing stream of debris. But 3I Atlas has refused to perform. It brightens, then dims, but never in ways that match fragmentation. The models of cometary behavior crumble against its irregular rhythm. Think of it like music. A song has a beat, a time signature you can follow, but imagine a song that shifts rhythm without warning. One bar in 4/4 time, the next in 5, then silence, then noise. That's what astronomers are hearing in the data. A song from another star played in a key we don't understand. And the deeper question is this: what does unexpected look like when the unexpected is the only thing you've seen? With Oumuamua, the surprise was its shape and its strange acceleration. With 3I Atlas, the surprise seems to be that nothing about it is ordinary. Every piece of data points towards something unfamiliar, as if the universe is reminding us not to grow complacent. Some have whispered about hidden structure, not technology, not necessarily, but perhaps a composition unlike anything we've seen. Could it be denser than expected, packed with heavy metals or exotic ices that don't behave under sunlight the way water ice does? Or could it be hollow, with pockets inside that release gases sporadically, creating its strange flicker? And here's the unsettling part. Both of those explanations still fall under normal astronomy. They would still make 3I Atlas a natural object. But what if even those models fail? What if the unexpected outcome isn't natural at all, but something we've never dared to imagine? That possibility lingers in the background, not shouted, not even written into official papers, but whispered in the quiet between calculations. Because when you stare at something that refuses prediction, you start to wonder if prediction itself is the wrong tool. Even the 60% figure tells its own story. Probabilities like that don't appear out of nowhere. They emerge from countless simulations, each run again and again with small adjustments. When most of those runs end in anomalous outcomes, the confidence grows. And in this case, the confidence points not toward stability, but toward disruption. So the question becomes, disruption of what? If it fragments, it might scatter across Mars's orbit, sending shards into paths that could, years later, intersect with Earth. If it flares, it might flood detectors with unexpected bursts of dust and gas, confusing instruments designed to track more predictable behavior. And if it refuses to leave, if it becomes bound to the sun in some eccentric orbit, then we would be living with 3I Atlas for decades, maybe centuries. That last possibility is the one that stirs the most unease, because we've never had an interstellar visitor stay. They come, they pass, they vanish. To have one remain would be to change the solar system forever. It would mean our night sky now holds a permanent reminder of the stars beyond, a shard of elsewhere orbiting alongside us. And isn't that the most unexpected thing of all? Not an explosion, not a fragment, not a flare, but a presence, something that refuses to leave as if it belongs here. So the 60% figure is not just a number, it's a threshold, a reminder that possibility outweighs certainty, that the universe does not owe us predictability. And as telescopes keep turning toward 3I Atlas, as models keep fracturing into unexpected paths, one thought grows harder to ignore. Maybe the unexpected was never the exception. Maybe it's the rule. One of the most fascinating things about 3I Atlas isn't just what it's doing now. It's how much it reminds astronomers of what we thought we understood, and then how quickly it veers away from those expectations. We love to compare it to Oumuamua, that first strange visitor in 2017, because Oumuamua rewrote the rules. But the comparison also hides something deeper. Oumuamua left us puzzled, yes, but it was gone before we could truly chase it. 3I Atlas, by contrast, is hanging around long enough to make us uncomfortable. That lingering presence matters. Imagine standing on a platform as a train thunders past. It's fast, loud, and you barely catch more than a glimpse. That's Oumuamua. Now imagine another train that slows down just enough that you can peer inside, watch its shadows flicker, even wonder if someone's staring back. That's 3I Atlas. It's moving through our neighborhood of space like it has time to spare, and that's what allows astronomers to notice all the little irregularities. And those irregularities are piling up. Its spin doesn't match its shape. Its light doesn't match its rotation. Its orbit doesn't match the models. For every line of data, there's a question mark attached. It's not enough to call it alien or artificial or even intentional. Those words carry too much weight, but it is enough to say that it doesn't feel random. And in astronomy, not random is a phrase that makes people sit up a little straighter. The truth is, our solar system isn't used to visitors. Planets follow their orbits like clockwork. Comets and asteroids obey gravity's pull, sometimes dramatic, but always predictable in hindsight. When an object arrives from the deep between stars, it's like an unexpected knock on the door. We don't know if it's a traveler, a trespasser, or just a wanderer passing through. And with 3I Atlas, the knock is louder than anyone expected. What unsettles researchers most is not that it's doing something dramatic, but that it hasn't, at least not yet. If it had broken apart, they could log it, analyze the fragments, and close the book. If it had faded quickly, they could file it away as another dying comet. Instead, it's doing just enough to remain a mystery, but not enough to reveal its secret, like a riddle stretched across the sky. And then there's the human element. We're not good at waiting. When a number like 60% enters the conversation, our minds fill in the blanks. We imagine fireworks in the night sky, fragments glowing against the backdrop of Mars, or sudden bursts of dust confusing satellites and telescopes. We picture outcomes that may never come, and that impatience, that curiosity, is part of the story too. But perhaps the most haunting idea is the simplest. What if the unexpected outcome is that nothing happens at all? What if the 60% chance leads only to a quiet, steady orbit? A visitor that settles into the solar system and refuses to leave. It would be anticlimactic in one sense, but transformative in another, because that would mean our skies have changed forever. To live with an interstellar object as a permanent neighbor is something no generation of humans has experienced before. The planets are familiar, the comets are periodic. Even the asteroids that cross our orbit are expected guests. But this would be different. A shard of another star system, a fragment from the faraway dark, choosing, or being chosen, to remain. Imagine teaching future generations that when they look at the night sky, one of those faint lights doesn't belong to our system at all, that it's a visitor that came from elsewhere and stayed. The psychological weight of that is immense. It would remind us daily that the boundary between us and them, between our sun and the rest of the galaxy, isn't as firm as we once thought. And maybe that's the real reason astronomers are restless. Not because 3i Atlas is about to explode or vanish, but because it might prove that we don't control the story of our solar system as tightly as we believed. We're used to being the central characters, watching the drama unfold around us. But perhaps the play is larger, and we're just one scene among many. For now, the telescopes keep turning, the models keep running, and the probability hovers. 60%. Enough to keep us awake, enough to keep us wondering, enough to remind us that the unexpected is no longer a possibility. It's a presence. And so we drift with it, night after night, waiting to see what surprise it will deliver. Not tomorrow, not next week, but eventually. Because when the universe places odds like this, it rarely folds quietly. Something is coming, and though we don't know what form it will take, we do know this. 3i Atlas refuses to be ordinary, and that alone is worth paying attention to. What's fascinating is how silence pace can feel louder than noise. We expect comets to roar with activity as they near the sun, streaming long tails of gas and dust, flaring brilliantly before fading into memory. With 3 Atlas, the silence is in the gaps, the long stretches where it does nothing, followed by sudden bursts of irregular light. It's as if the object wants us to lean closer, to squint into the dark, to wonder what we're missing. Astronomers track brightness curves like a heartbeat monitor. A steady pulse is comforting. An erratic one is cause for alarm. 3i Atlas's light curve doesn't just pulse, it stutters, hesitates, and then surges when least expected. Some compare it to a whisper that keeps getting interrupted. Others say it's like trying to follow a conversation through static. Whatever the analogy, the meaning is the same. It doesn't belong to the patterns we know. What's fascinating is how silence pace can feel louder than noise. We expect comets to roar with activity as they near the sun, streaming long tails of gas and dust, flaring brilliantly before fading into memory. With 3i Atlas, the silence is in the gaps, the long stretches where it does nothing, followed by sudden bursts of irregular light. It's as if the object wants us to lean closer, to squint into the dark, to wonder what we're missing. Astronomers track brightness curves like a heartbeat monitor. A steady pulse is comforting. An erratic one is cause for alarm. 3i Atlas's light curve doesn't just pulse, it stutters, hesitates, and then surges when least expected. Some compare it to a whisper that keeps getting interrupted. Others say it's like trying to follow a conversation through static. Whatever the analogy, the meaning is the same. It doesn't belong to the patterns we know. And when something doesn't belong, the imagination races. Could 3i Atlas be a shattered relic from a violent collision in some other system, carrying scars that make its surface unpredictable? Or is it a pristine fragment, untouched for eons, finally unraveling under our sun's heat? Each possibility tells a different story. One is of destruction and survival. The other is of hidden complexity, waiting for the right conditions to emerge. What unsettles scientists most is the timeline. The closer it comes to Mars, the more these irregularities multiply. That's not unusual. Comets tend to grow more active near the sun, but the scale of unpredictability here feels exaggerated. Instead of a slow build, it's more like a drumbeat quickening, each irregular pulse hinting at something approaching. And yet, nothing has happened. Yet. No grand explosion, no definitive flare, no clear evidence of breaking apart. Just the steady rise of probabilities, climbing toward that 60% threshold. Enough to suggest that something is likely, but not enough to say what. The object is both revealing and concealing itself in the same moment. And that duality, half known, half unknown, is where the hooks of curiosity sink deep. Because in science, unknowns are supposed to shrink with time. The longer we observe, the more data we collect, the clearer the picture becomes. With 3i Atlas, the opposite seems to be happening. The longer we watch, the stranger it appears. It's a reminder that interstellar visitors carry not just mass and momentum, but memory. They're fragments of distant histories, shaped by forces we've never seen. Imagine trying to understand a foreign culture by studying one artifact, half buried, chipped and weathered. You'd learn something, but you'd also guess, speculate, invent connections that might not exist. That's what astronomers are doing now. They're archaeologists with telescopes, brushing away cosmic dust to reveal a story that may never be whole. And the story keeps circling back to the same unsettling thought. What if the unexpected isn't spectacular, but subtle? What if the surprise is not an explosion or a break, but a slow, quiet settling into our system? If that happens, it changes the solar system forever. Not with drama, but with permanence. There's another whisper among astronomers, one that they rarely put into words. 3i Atlas might not just be a visitor, it might be the first of many. If space between stars is filled with fragments like this, and if they can linger once they cross our path, then maybe our system isn't as self-contained as we like to think. Maybe the boundaries are porous and the traffic is heavier than we've imagined. That thought reframes everything, because then the real question isn't just what 3i Atlas will do, it's whether it's the first of a line, a signal that interstellar debris, or something more, is constantly passing through. And if that's the case, then our solar system isn't a quiet cul-de-sac at the edge of the galaxy, it's an intersection where objects from faraway systems drift, collide, or settle. Some may leave no trace. Others, like this one, may stop long enough to force us to notice. And once you start noticing, you can't help but wonder, how many times before has this happened without our telescopes to catch it? How many visitors have we missed? That's why astronomers can't look away. Not because they expect fireworks tomorrow, but because 3i Atlas is teaching us something uncomfortable. Our home is less isolated than we believed, and every time it flickers, every time it hesitates in its path, it's reminding us of that truth. So the 60% chance isn't just a number anymore, it's a message, a reminder that the unexpected isn't rare, it's inevitable. And perhaps, just perhaps, 3i Atlas is the first step in learning to see the universe not as a quiet backdrop, but as a crowded stage where surprises are always waiting in the wings. The closer 3i Atlas drifts toward Mars, the more the questions pile up. If this were an ordinary comet, astronomers would be busy calculating the exact hour its ice would crack, when the jets would burst, and how its tail would stretch behind it in the glow of sunlight. But nothing about this object is ordinary. Its surface remains stubbornly quiet at times, then flares as though it's hiding reservoirs of energy that only awaken in unpredictable bursts. Some researchers have suggested that fragmentation is inevitable, that deep within its body, pressure is building, waiting for the right moment to split it apart. That would be dramatic, a sudden burst of brightness, shards of material scattering into a glittering cloud. But so far, 3i Atlas has refused to oblige. It remains intact, as if testing the patience of every telescope trained on it. And that waiting game creates unease, because in space, fragmentation isn't just a spectacle, it has consequences. If 3i Atlas were to break into pieces near Mars, those fragments could scatter across its orbit, creating a hazard not only for satellites, but eventually for Earth itself. Debris doesn't vanish. It drifts, influenced by gravity, weaving itself into the larger patterns of the solar system. What begins as a single crack could echo for decades. But here's the part that keeps people leaning forward. The models don't agree. Some show it disintegrating quickly. Others suggest it remains whole, sliding neatly past the sun and vanishing back into the void. And still others, the ones that keep showing up more often now, suggest it doesn't leave at all, that instead it finds itself caught, claimed by our star's gravity, looping into a new orbit. That possibility is the one that changes everything, because it would mean that for the first time in history, an interstellar object has decided to stay. Imagine the psychological weight of that realization. A visitor from another system, not just passing through but settling into our celestial family. We would no longer be able to say the solar system is purely ours. And if it stays, what role does it play? Would it quietly circle the sun like countless other rocks and comets, fading into the background noise of astronomy? Or would its irregularities continue, each pulse of brightness, each wobble in orbit, hinting at something stranger than natural explanation? That's the unease hiding inside the 60% figure. It's not simply about whether it will flare or fragment. It's about whether we're on the verge of sharing our solar system with something we don't understand. Some astronomers compare the feeling to standing at the edge of a forest at night. You hear sounds you can't identify. A crack of a branch, a sudden rustle, a pause that feels too deliberate. You don't know if it's harmless or dangerous, but you do know it's out there, and it's closer than you realized. That's how 3i Atlas feels as it approaches Mars. Too unpredictable, too restless, too present. And Mars itself plays an interesting role in this unfolding drama. It becomes a marker, a place of encounter. If something dramatic is going to happen, astronomers believe it will happen soon after this crossing. That's why the timing matters. If it shatters near Mars, we'll see it. If it steadies and glides into orbit, we'll witness that too. The planet becomes a kind of stage, and the universe is holding its breath for the performance. Yet no matter how many models run, no matter how many simulations churn through supercomputers, one truth refuses to go away. Probability isn't certainty. 60% is compelling, but it still leaves 40% for the unexpected to remain hidden. And that gap, that sliver of uncertainty, is where imagination rushes in. What if the unexpected is not physical at all, but observational? What if our instruments themselves are struggling to make sense of an object shaped by forces we've never seen? Could its composition carry exotic ices or minerals that behave differently under sunlight? Could it hold hollow chambers that vent gas in irregular ways, creating the illusion of purpose? Or could it be something we don't have language for yet? These aren't questions with neat answers. They're open doors, and 3i Atlas keeps nudging us to step through them. Each new flicker of light, each deviation in orbit, is another reminder that our understanding of the cosmos is provisional, temporary, waiting to be rewritten. And maybe that's the real story here. Not whether 3i Atlas fragments or flares, but what it reveals about us. About our need for certainty in a universe that rarely offers it. We want models, predictions, guarantees, but what we get instead is probability, possibility, and mystery. And mystery is not comfortable. It lingers. It follows you long after the telescopes have shut down for the night. It whispers that something out there is happening, something we can't name yet, something that may change how we see our place in the galaxy. So as 3i Atlas moves closer to Mars, astronomers keep their instruments trained and their minds restless. The 60% chance of surprise hangs in the air like a storm warning. Not a promise, but a possibility. Not certain, but looming. And that may be the most honest reflection of the cosmos we can have. A sky full of questions, waiting for answers we may or may not be ready to hear. If 3i Atlas does remain, the story of our solar system will change in ways we haven't had to consider before. Because for as long as humans have studied the heavens, we've thought of our system as closed. The planets and moons circle the sun. The comets swing through in their arcs, the asteroids drift in belts or cross our path, and all of it feels self-contained, a family of worlds bound by one star. Visitors arrive, but they don't stay. They pass quickly, leaving us with fleeting data and unanswered questions. But 3i Atlas hints at something different. It's not racing through, it's hesitating, lingering, almost as though it's searching for the right rhythm to match. And that hesitation unsettles astronomers because it means this isn't just another entry in a catalogue of comets. It could be the beginning of a permanent addition. What does permanence mean here? It means that instead of fading into the background, 3i Atlas would continue to affect models of the solar system for generations. Every orbital calculation, every projection of cometary paths, every chart of near-Earth objects would now have to account for an interstellar body that doesn't play by the same rules. It would be like adding an unexpected instrument into a symphony. Suddenly, all the music shifts, even if only slightly. And here's where the unease sharpens. If it stays, what message does that send? Natural or not, ordinary or extraordinary, the symbolism is undeniable. The galaxy has reached in, tapped our shoulder, and left us with a permanent reminder that we're not isolated. That the void between stars is not empty, but full of wanderers that sometimes choose not to wander anymore. It's not hard to see why some astronomers describe it in almost emotional terms. They talk about it like a guest who refuses to leave the party, whose presence changes the mood of the room. At first it's curiosity, then surprise, then a question of how long they'll be around. That lingering presence changes the dynamic for everyone. And in this case, the guest is enormous, not just in size, but in implication. If one interstellar object can become permanent, how many others might follow? If the solar system can capture one shard from the stars, perhaps it has happened before, and we simply haven't noticed. Perhaps some of the icy bodies already circling our sun aren't native at all. Perhaps they too were visitors once, long ago. This is the thought that keeps resurfacing in late-night conversations among researchers, not just what is 3i Atlas doing now? But what else have we missed? Astronomy is, after all, a science of glimpses. We see only what our instruments allow. Much of the sky has passed by unnoticed, and if the 60% chance plays out, if 3i Atlas does stay, it would be a wake-up call that our catalogue of the solar system is incomplete. The practical consequences would ripple outward. Space agencies would have to model its orbit carefully, especially if fragments drift toward paths that intersect with Mars or even Earth in the distant future. Satellites could be affected. Missions would have to consider its presence. And the public, hearing about it not as a fleeting oddity, but as a permanent fixture, would begin to look up differently. Because permanence changes psychology, we can dismiss a brief visitor as an anomaly, but when something lingers, when it remains a part of our nightly sky, it becomes a symbol, a reminder that the universe is not quiet, not static, but restless. And that restlessness invites deeper questions. Why here? Why now? What caused this fragment of another system to drift across unfathomable distances only to be caught by our sun? Was it chance, pure randomness? Or was it inevitable that any system with gravity given enough time will pull in a stranger from the dark? The rational mind leans toward chance. The universe is vast, gravity is relentless, and eventually even improbable events must occur. But the imaginative mind cannot help but whisper, what if it's not chance? What if there's meaning in the timing? What if this object, arriving now, is part of a larger story we haven't yet glimpsed? This is how astronomers talk late at night, when the data is still uploading and the sky feels endless. They ask the questions that don't fit into research papers. They wonder not just about numbers and probabilities, but about meaning. And 3i Atlas, more than any visitor before, has given them reason to do so. So as it drifts closer to Mars, the 60% chance of the unexpected is no longer just about physical outcomes. It's about perspective, about what it means for humanity to realize that the solar system isn't sealed, that the boundaries we imagine between us and them are porous, and that maybe, just maybe, 3I Atlas isn't the first to arrive, only the first we noticed in time. If 3I Atlas truly settles into our solar system, it raises a question that reaches backward as much as it does forward. What if it's not the first? What if interstellar visitors have been arriving for billions of years, slipping quietly into orbit, disguising themselves among the comets and asteroids we assume were born here? It's an unsettling idea because it forces us to reconsider what we think we know. Our catalogues are full of objects we call long-period comets, icy wanderers that sweep in from the outer reaches once in 1,000 years or more. But those classifications rely on assumptions. Assumptions about origin, about family, about what belongs and what doesn't. If even a few of those bodies were originally strangers from other stars, then the solar system isn't a closed system at all. It's a gathering place, a meeting point for fragments of different histories. Some astronomers are beginning to look at the data through this lens. They ask, which comets behave strangely, even by comet standards? Which ones have orbits that make little sense when traced backward through time? Which ones flare in unusual ways or fade too quickly or resist simple classification? A handful fit the bill, perhaps coincidence, perhaps noise, or perhaps, like 3I Atlas, they are wanderers who crossed the void and never left. Think of the solar system as a harbour. Most of the ships anchored there were built locally, shaped by the tides of our sun's gravity. But every so often, a vessel drifts in from elsewhere, scarred by storms we never saw, carrying materials we've never touched. If it drops anchor, it becomes part of the harbour. Over time, no one remembers which ships were built here and which ones arrived as strangers. They all blend into the same skyline. The thought is both humbling and thrilling, because if we've already been living alongside interstellar objects without realizing it, then 3I Atlas isn't unique. It's just the first to pull back the curtain. It's the first to make us notice. And there's another implication here, survival. To reach us at all, 3I Atlas must have travelled unimaginable distances. It may have been born in the violent birth throes of a distant star system, flung out into the dark during planetary formation. It may have wandered for millions of years, even billions, through radiation, collisions, and the gravity of countless other stars. That it arrived intact tells us something about its resilience, and if others like it are here, quietly circling in our system already, then perhaps resilience is a common trait of these wanderers. But resilience is not the same as predictability. Just because they can survive doesn't mean they behave in ways we understand, and that's what gnaws at astronomers now. If we've misclassified visitors in the past, what else have we misinterpreted? What other data points filed neatly into categories might actually be telling us that the universe is messier and more connected than we thought? The deeper we look, the more the boundary between our solar system and the rest of the galaxy begins to blur, and perhaps that's the real lesson of 3I Atlas. Not that it's the first of its kind, but that it's the first we've truly recognized as foreign. Recognition changes everything. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you name it, you can't go back to pretending it belongs here. This recognition carries weight. Because if 3I Atlas is proof that interstellar visitors can remain, then our system is not a closed loop. It's porous, it's open to the galaxy, and that openness changes the way we think about everything, from the origins of water on Earth, to the possibility of life, to the idea of communication. If objects can drift in from other stars, what else can? It's almost dizzying to consider. because suddenly the solar system feels less like a home and more like a crossroads. And crossroads are places of chance encounters, unexpected meetings, stories that collide and tangle. That's what keeps astronomers awake at night, not just the 60% chance of something unusual happening soon, but the growing awareness that maybe this isn't unusual at all. Maybe this is the universe showing us the truth of how it always works. So when you look at the sky and think of Three-Eye Atlas, imagine not just one visitor, but a long line of them stretching back into history. Imagine fragments of other worlds quietly circling our sun, hidden among familiar objects, carrying secrets we may never fully uncover. Imagine the possibility that the solar system has always been more crowded, more foreign, more alive with stories from elsewhere than we ever dared to believe. And if that's true, then Three-Eye Atlas isn't just a mystery, it's a revelation, a reminder that we are part of a galaxy that does not respect boundaries, a galaxy where the unexpected isn't rare but routine. If the solar system is more like a crossroads than a sealed chamber, what does that mean for us, the observers, the storytellers, the ones who've always believed our star was the center of a quiet, orderly neighborhood? It's easy to think of astronomy as numbers and charts, but behind those calculations are human minds, and those minds are beginning to wrestle with something bigger than equations. For centuries, we've drawn boundaries around what we call home. First, it was the village, then the continent, then the Earth itself. Eventually, with rockets and telescopes, we stretched the word home to mean the solar system. But Three-Eye Atlas is reminding us that maybe those boundaries were never as firm as we thought, that what we call ours has always been open, porous, and vulnerable to the influence of things beyond. That realization can be unsettling. Humans like predictability. We like to think of the universe as a backdrop, a stage where we play out our story under familiar stars. The planets orbit, the comets return, the asteroids drift. Everything feels stable, cyclical, knowable. But when a visitor like Three-Eye Atlas refuses to fit the script, it cracks the illusion. Suddenly the backdrop isn't fixed. Suddenly the stage itself is shifting. This shift isn't just scientific, it's psychological. Because if the solar system has always been porous, then so has Earth. The water in our oceans, the carbon in our bodies, the elements in our bones may not all be local. Some of it may have arrived on the backs of interstellar wanderers long before we were here to notice. And if that's true, then our connection to the galaxy isn't distant, it's intimate. We are, quite literally, built from borrowed pieces of other stars. For some, this idea is thrilling. It means we are not isolated, that our story is part of a greater tapestry woven across light years. For others, it's unsettling, because if interstellar fragments can drift in without warning, what else can arrive? What else might shape our world without us ever realizing it until too late? That tension between awe and unease is where humanity stands right now. We marvel at the beauty of a comet tail glowing in the night sky, but we also remember Tunguska, Chelyabinsk, Chicxulub. We know that what inspires wonder can also bring devastation, and Three-Eye Atlas embodies both sides of that coin. It is beautiful, mysterious, and possibly dangerous all at once. But maybe danger isn't the only lens. Maybe permanence is even more disruptive than destruction. Because if Three-Eye Atlas stays, it forces us to live with the unknown. It forces us to look up each night and see, circling our sun, an object we cannot explain, an object that doesn't follow the rules, an object that feels foreign. That word carries weight, foreign. It reminds us of how we've always drawn lines between us and them, between what belongs and what doesn't. But what happens when the foreign isn't a distant star or galaxy, but a presence within our own system? What happens when the foreign becomes a neighbor? That's the thought astronomers rarely say aloud. but you can hear it in the way they describe the object. They don't just talk about orbital mechanics or light curves. They talk about unease, about strangeness, about a feeling that it doesn't quite fit. And those feelings matter, because science isn't just equations, it's also intuition, the sense that something in the data isn't lining up, that something unseen is at play. And maybe that's why the 60% chance of the unexpected feels so heavy. Not because we fear fireworks in the sky, but because we fear what permanence might mean for our identity. If the solar system is porous, then our sense of home must expand. And expanding home has always been a disruptive act. It forces us to rethink who we are, where we belong, and how small we truly might be. But here's the other side of that disruption: possibility. If the solar system is open, then so is our future. Just as objects drift in, so too could we drift out. If wanderers can cross the gulf between stars, maybe one day so can we. Maybe what feels foreign today will feel familiar tomorrow, when it is our own machines, our own fragments, crossing into someone else's sky. That's the paradox Three-Eye Atlas presents. It makes us feel small, even vulnerable, but at the same time, it stretches our imagination outward. It reminds us that the story of humanity is not confined to Earth or even to the sun. It is part of a larger flow, a restless exchange of matter and energy that does not recognize borders. So when we say there's a 60% chance of something unexpected, perhaps the truth is that the unexpected has already happened. The object is here. It's acting strangely. It's forcing us to see ourselves differently. The real surprise is not what it will do next, but how it has already changed us simply by existing in our sky. When scientists talk about Three-Eye Atlas now, it's not only numbers and orbital maps, it's a shift in mindset. For decades, astronomy has worked under the assumption that interstellar objects would be rare and fleeting, like shooting stars on a cosmic scale, fascinating to glimpse, but gone before you could blink. But with this one, the narrative is changing. If Three-Eye Atlas really is slowing, hesitating, or perhaps staying, then the textbooks themselves will need rewriting. That's not a small thing. Science is built on models. Models let us predict, and predictions give us a sense of control over the chaos of the universe. But when a new piece refuses to fit the puzzle, it forces the whole picture to shift. This is why Three-Eye Atlas feels so monumental. It isn't just a comet with a strange trajectory, it's a challenge to the framework we've been using to understand our place in the galaxy. And that challenge doesn't stop at science. It ripples outward into culture, art, philosophy. Humanity has always used the night sky as a canvas for meaning. When comets blazed overhead, ancient cultures saw omens. When planets moved in their dance, people wrote myths of gods and heroes. Even today, in an age of telescopes and data, we can't resist attaching stories to what we see. Three-Eye Atlas is no exception. Already it has become more than an astronomical object. It's a mirror for our imagination. Think of how quickly ideas have spread. Some say it's a fragment from a shattered world. Others suggest it could be technology, a probe disguised as ice. Still others see it as a symbol of endings, beginnings, or warnings. Each explanation reveals less about the object itself and more about us, about what we fear and what we hope. This is where Three-Eye Atlas takes on a dual role. On one hand, it is a scientific puzzle demanding observation, data, careful analysis. On the other, it is a cultural event, shaping conversations in classrooms, coffee shops, and late-night discussions across the world. That combination is rare. Most astronomical discoveries live quietly in the journals, known only to specialists, but every once in a while, something breaks through to the wider public, and suddenly the cosmos feels close, personal, unavoidable. The last time this happened, in a similar way, was perhaps when Oumuamua streaked through in 2017. But Oumuamua left as quickly as it came, a mystery we barely had time to touch. 3i Atlas is different because it's lingering. It's giving us time to think, to argue, to dream. And the longer it stays, the deeper its imprint on both science and culture will be. For scientists, the questions pile up. How do we adjust orbital models to account for an interstellar body staying behind? Could this explain other anomalies we've brushed aside? What does this mean for planetary defense, for the possibility of fragments colliding with Mars, Earth, or other worlds? For culture, the questions spiral outward. What if this is not chance but design? If other systems send their fragments here, what does that make us? Hosts, witnesses, neighbors. How do we live with the idea that our solar system is not just ours, but part of a galactic highway? It is no wonder then that 3i Atlas is becoming a touchstone for both. Scientists argue over its orbital mechanics. Storytellers weave narratives of what it could mean. And in this blending of science and story lies its true power. Because 3i Atlas is not just an object to be studied, it's an event reshaping the way we think about the universe. And perhaps that's the real gift of its unexpected path. By refusing to behave like a normal comet, it forces us out of our comfort zone. It makes us reconsider not only what the universe is, but how we respond to it. Do we shrink back in fear, imagining dangers, or do we lean forward in curiosity, ready to let our models expand and our imaginations stretch? The answer to that question matters, because history shows that every time the universe confronts us with something bigger than we expected, our response shapes the future. When Galileo turned his telescope to Jupiter and saw moons circling another world, humanity's understanding of its place changed forever. When Einstein revealed that space itself could bend and stretch, we had to rethink the very fabric of reality. And now, perhaps, 3i Atlas is nudging us into another shift, a reminder that the universe is not static, and neither are we. So as it glides closer to Mars, with its 60% chance of doing something unexpected, perhaps the true unexpected thing is already happening. The way it's reshaping our thinking, the way it's blending science and story into one, making us not only observers of the cosmos, but participants in its unfolding mystery. And that's the thing about mysteries. They don't just ask for answers, they ask for imagination. The more we watch 3i Atlas, the more it feels like a test, not of our telescopes, not of our theories, but of our imagination. Because how we respond to this object may tell us something about how we will respond to the galaxy itself when the time comes. If 3i Atlas lingers, it will not simply be another item in an astronomical catalogue. It will be a permanent feature of our shared sky, something every child growing up in the next century will know by name. And when you grow up with a mystery in the sky, it shapes you. It makes the universe feel alive, restless, unpredictable. That subtle shift in mindset could be the spark for new generations of explorers. Think about the effect of Mars. For decades, even before the rovers, Mars has been the world we fix our gaze upon, the place we imagine stepping onto first. Not because it's easy, but because it's near and different enough to tantalize. Now imagine what 3i Atlas could do if it stays, a body from another star, now part of our solar system. How long before the first mission is planned to chase it, to land on it, to drill into it, and ask what secrets it carries? In that sense, 3i Atlas is more than an object. It's a doorway, a reminder that the frontier isn't closed, that the galaxy is sending us invitations, if only we are bold enough to accept them. But here's the tension. Humanity has never been united in how it responds to frontiers. For every dreamer who sees an opportunity, there are skeptics who see risk. Some argue we should study from afar, cautious, careful, unwilling to disturb what we don't understand. Others insist that waiting too long is itself a danger, that hesitation means missing opportunities. And beneath both positions lies a deeper truth. How we handle this mystery may reflect how we will handle the far larger ones to come. Because if 3i Atlas is a wanderer from another star, then it is proof that crossing the gulf between systems is not impossible. If ice and rock can drift across light years, then so can machines. And if machines can, maybe one day so can we. That possibility transforms 3i Atlas from a passive object into an active question. Do we intend to stay confined to our cradle? Or do we intend to follow the paths that these wanderers trace? This is why some astronomers and thinkers describe the object not only as a scientific discovery, but as a symbol of choice. Do we keep looking inward, circling our own star, content with familiar orbits? Or do we begin to look outward, accepting that the galaxy is open to us if we dare to move through it? Symbols have power. In the past, a single event has been enough to shift the course of history. The sight of Earth from space turned astronauts into philosophers. The discovery of exoplanets transformed our understanding of the night sky from points of light to possible homes. Perhaps 3i Atlas, by its mere presence, will do the same. Of course, not everyone sees it this way. For many, 3i Atlas is simply a scientific oddity, one more puzzle in a universe full of puzzles. But even those voices cannot deny the unease, the fascination, the way it sparks late-night debates. And it is in those debates that the seeds of the future are sown, because every time humanity argues about the unknown, it is also preparing itself to face it. Imagine a century from now, when historians look back. They may not describe 3i Atlas as the largest object, or the most dangerous, or even the most beautiful. Instead, they may describe it as the first that made us realize our solar system is not sealed, that the galaxy will always send us reminders that we are part of something larger, and that realization might be the spark that pushes us toward the stars. Because here's the truth, humanity is already restless. We dream of colonies on Mars, habitats around Jupiter, ships that might one day sail beyond Pluto. We tell stories of interstellar travel, not just because they entertain, but because they remind us of what might be possible. And when an object like 3i Atlas appears, it feels less like fantasy and more like invitation. And perhaps that's why it has captured so much attention. Not because of what it is today, but because of what it suggests tomorrow. A tomorrow where the galaxy is not just background, but foreground. A tomorrow where interstellar journeys are not only the domain of comets, but of people. So when astronomers say there's a 60% chance of the unexpected, maybe what they mean is this. The unexpected is not in the object itself, but in us, in the way it shifts our focus, our curiosity, our willingness to step beyond comfort, in the way it forces us to ask, not just, what is it doing here, but what are we going to do about it? That's the question 3i Atlas poses, not silently, but insistently. Every night it remains in our sky, and one way or another, we will have to answer. The strangest thing about 3i Atlas is that, in the end, it tells us more about ourselves than it does about the object itself. A piece of ice and rock shouldn't hold such power, and yet it does because it has become a screen onto which we project our imagination. Scientists, philosophers, dreamers, warriors all see something different when they look at it. For some, 3i Atlas is a threat. They imagine collisions, disruptions, chaotic orbits. They think of history's scars, the asteroid that ended the age of dinosaurs, the smaller strikes that shook Earth in more recent centuries. Through that lens, 3i Atlas is a messenger of vulnerability, a reminder that even the mightiest civilizations are at the mercy of what falls from the sky. For others, it is a symbol of connection. They imagine not destruction but continuity, that the building blocks of life itself may have once ridden on wanderers like this, seeding worlds with carbon, water, and chemistry. For them, 3i Atlas is not a danger, but a kin, a relative from across the galaxy, proof that we are not isolated, but woven into a larger story of cosmic exchange. And then there are those who look at it with suspicion, with questions that sound more like science fiction than science. What if it isn't only rock and ice? What if it carries within it traces of intention, fragments shaped not only by physics, but by minds? They point out the unusual path, the hesitation, the strange brightness. Most scientists dismiss those theories, but the fact that they exist at all shows how much this object grips the imagination. Because when the unknown lingers, we fill the silence with stories. This is why 3i Atlas is more than an astronomical anomaly. It's a mirror. It reflects our fears of chaos, our hopes for connection, our suspicion of intelligence beyond ourselves. It reveals in real time how humanity grapples with uncertainty. Do we meet it with dread, with wonder, with speculation, or with all of them at once? That tension is shaping not only conversations among scientists, but among ordinary people too. Scroll through forums, listen to late-night radio, watch the way headlines frame the story. Some say interstellar visitor raises alarm, others say interstellar visitor sparks awe. Some say it's proof of our fragility, others call it a sign of destiny. The same object, the same data, but wildly different meanings depending on who is looking. And isn't that always how it is with the cosmos? The stars don't change, but our stories about them do. Ancient farmers saw calendars in the constellations. Sailors saw maps. Poets saw symbols of love and fate. Astronomers saw nuclear furnaces. Now we see potential homes for life. The sky remains the same, but humanity grows, changes, projects itself differently with every era. 3i Atlas is simply the newest chapter in that long tradition. But it may also be one of the most important, because unlike distant stars or galaxies, this object is here. It's close enough to measure, to model, perhaps even to touch, and that nearness makes the stories we attach to it feel urgent. They are not abstract, they carry weight. If we call it a danger, we begin planning for defense. If we call it a kin, we begin looking for origins. If we call it a signal, we begin listening more carefully to the cosmos. In this way, 3i Atlas is shaping our priorities. Already, observatories have shifted schedules to track it more closely. Funding proposals mention it as justification for better telescopes, faster surveys. Space agencies include it in risk assessments and mission planning. Our stories are not just stories, they change what we do next. And perhaps that's the most fascinating part. The object may be indifferent, drifting on its path, untouched by human concerns. But our reaction to it could alter the course of our species. Because if it makes us invest in better instruments, then future discoveries will follow. If it makes us dream of missions to interstellar objects, then exploration will accelerate. If it makes us reflect on our vulnerability, then planetary defense will strengthen. In that sense, 3i Atlas is not passive at all. It is catalytic. Its presence nudges humanity into motion, into new questions, new plans, new possibilities. It doesn't matter whether it stays, leaves, or fragments. The fact that it arrived at all has already reshaped us. And maybe that's the real mirror effect. Not just that it shows us who we are, but that it quietly changes who we will become. Because as much as we like to imagine ourselves as observers, sometimes the act of observing transforms us, and when the object being observed is a fragment from another star, that transformation can be profound. So perhaps, in the end, the 60% chance of the unexpected isn't about 3i Atlas at all. Perhaps it's about us. Perhaps the unexpected is the way this single object is accelerating our imagination, forcing us to ask questions we weren't ready to ask, pushing us to prepare for futures we hadn't yet dared to imagine. Every civilization has had its sky stories. The Greeks filled it with gods, the Egyptians with eternal journeys of the soul, the Polynesians with maps for navigation, the Maya with calendars that counted time itself. What's different now is that our stories are being written in real time, shaped by data and telescopes as much as by myth and imagination. And 3i Atlas is quickly becoming one of those stories. The way we frame it matters, because stories guide not only how we think, but how we act. Call 3i Atlas a threat, and you'll inspire funding for planetary defense, new radar systems, missions designed to deflect or destroy. Call it a messenger, and you'll inspire listening, searches for signals, deeper scans of the sky, new questions about whether other minds might be at work. Call it a kin, and you'll inspire connection, searches for chemical building blocks, missions to sample, to touch, to compare with Earth's own beginnings. Each framing pushes humanity in a different direction, and what's fascinating is that all of them are happening at once. News outlets run with sensational headlines. Universities publish cautious models. Independent thinkers spin out theories that sound half science, half myth. In this swirl of interpretation, one thing is clear. The object is not just shaping science, it's shaping identity, because identity is about perspective. For centuries, humanity has defined itself by what we are not. We are not the center of the universe. We are not infinite. We are not untouched by time. Each discovery has stripped away an illusion and replaced it with a more expansive truth. 3i Atlas may be the next such discovery, not because of what it is, but because of what it represents, that we are not alone even in our own system, that our neighborhood is not closed but open, and that openness can be unsettling. Humans have always looked to the sky for certainty. Farmers needed predictability in the stars to know when to plant. Sailors needed stability in the constellations to know where to steer. Even now, we crave regularity, cycles, orbits, things we can chart and rely upon. But when something refuses to fit, when it lingers where it should not linger, the certainty crumbles. We are left not with maps, but with questions. And yet, questions can be powerful. Questions drive us forward in ways that answers never do. If 3i Atlas were simple, ordinary, easily explained, it would be a footnote. But because it resists simplicity, it has become a catalyst. It invites us to ask not only what is it, but what does it mean? And those questions are reshaping how we see ourselves. Perhaps the most profound shift is this. If interstellar visitors can become permanent, then the solar system is not only ours, it is shared. And if it is shared, then our identity as a species must expand to include that reality. We are not only earthlings, not only citizens of one sun, we are participants in a larger galactic exchange. We are part of a community we cannot yet see, a network of stars whose fragments travel and mingle. Imagine what that does to human imagination over generations. Children growing up with the knowledge that our solar system is porous may think differently about the future. They may see travel between stars not as a dream, but as an inevitability. They may see themselves less as isolated and more as connected. And in that subtle shift, the seeds of our long-term destiny may be planted. Already you can feel the cultural echoes. Writers, filmmakers, and artists are weaving 3i Atlas into their work. Philosophers debate whether its presence changes how we think about home. Educators use it to spark curiosity in classrooms. The story spreads, not as a single narrative, but as many. Each one feeds into the identity of a species that is perhaps for the first time beginning to feel itself as galactic. Of course, identity is not shaped overnight. It is a slow accumulation of stories, metaphors, lessons, but moments like this, rare, dramatic, impossible to ignore, accelerate that process. Just as Galileo's telescope shifted identity from Earth-centered to Sun-centered, and just as Apollo shifted identity from Earth-bound to spacefaring, 3i Atlas may shift us again, from solar system-focused to galaxy-aware. And perhaps that is the real importance of the 60% chance of something unexpected. Not that the object will do something dramatic in the sky, but that it has already done something dramatic in us. It has shifted our sense of self. It has opened the possibility that we are not just watching the galaxy. We are living within it, touched by it, shaped by it, even when we didn't realize it. So when future generations look back, they may not see 3i Atlas only as an object. They may see it as a mirror, a teacher, a catalyst. The thing that reminded us that our identity is not confined to Earth or even to one sun. The thing that hinted, quietly but firmly, that humanity's story is only beginning to expand. When an interstellar object lingers, it doesn't just stir imagination, it stirs politics, economics, and priorities. Because if 3i Atlas is here to stay, then it isn't only astronomers who must adjust, it's everyone. Consider how quickly the conversation spreads once an anomaly becomes undeniable. A new comet might excite scientists, but a visitor from another star that might remain in orbit. That gets attention from lawmakers, funding bodies, even the military. Suddenly, the abstract becomes concrete, the strange becomes strategic, and the budgets begin to shift. We've already seen hints of this. Funding requests for new telescopes now mention 3i Atlas as justification. Mission proposals to chase interstellar bodies are no longer hypothetical. They carry urgency. If we don't act, the window may close, and the chance to study such an object up close may vanish for generations. That urgency is contagious. Politicians love the language of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, especially when it can be paired with phrases like national leadership and global prestige. And so 3i Atlas becomes more than a scientific puzzle. It becomes a line in a budget, a paragraph in a policy, a talking point in debates. Just as Sputnik once ignited a race to orbit, this object could ignite a quieter, but no less profound, race to study, to sample, perhaps even to claim. That last word, claim, is where the unease creeps in. Because when something new appears, history shows that nations don't always respond with unity. They respond with competition. Who gets there first? Who plants the first flag, even metaphorically? Who controls the data, the samples, the knowledge? Already you can imagine the briefing rooms, the conversations behind closed doors. 3i Atlas is not just a cosmic curiosity. It is a resource, a potential asset, something to be managed. But there is another possibility. Sometimes the sheer scale of a mystery forces cooperation. The International Space Station is proof of this. So is the Hubble telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, and countless joint missions that required nations to set aside rivalry for a higher goal. Could 3i Atlas do the same? Could its very strangeness remind us that no single country owns the sky? It's not unthinkable. If missions are planned, they will be costly, long-term, and technologically ambitious. Few nations could carry them alone. Collaboration may not be a choice, but a necessity, and in that necessity lies the chance for something rare. Global cooperation sparked not by crisis, but by curiosity. Still, the path is not guaranteed. Humanity is skilled at turning opportunities into battlegrounds. The question is whether we will treat 3i Atlas as a competitor to conquer or as a mystery to solve together. And the answer may reveal more about us than about the object itself. Because in the end, 3i Atlas does not care about our politics. It drifts on its path, silent, indifferent. But our response, the funding choices, the alliances formed or broken, the missions planned, will shape not only how we understand it, but how we see ourselves. Will we see ourselves as fractured tribes scrambling for advantage, or as a species capable of rising to meet the unknown with unity? This is why the conversations happening now matter so much. The way leaders frame the story sets the tone for decades. If it's framed as a threat, we prepare defensively. If it's framed as a race, we prepare competitively. But if it's framed as an opportunity, a shared chance to learn, to expand, to push beyond, then maybe, just maybe, 3i Atlas becomes a catalyst for cooperation in an age that desperately needs it. And here's the irony. The object itself may be ordinary, just rock and ice, drifting as physics dictates. But our reaction elevates it. Our choices invest it with meaning. In that sense, 3i Atlas has already become political, already become cultural, already become more than the sum of its parts. The question that lingers is this: how do we want future generations to remember our response? Will they look back and see another Cold War-style competition where resources were poured into beating rivals to the prize? Or will they see a rare moment when humanity looked beyond borders and remembered that the universe belongs to no one and therefore to everyone? That's the fork in the road 3i Atlas quietly presents. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it simply exists. And in its existence, it asks us to choose what kind of species we want to be. Because maybe the real unexpected outcome is not what the object does, but what we decide to do about it. And those decisions about funding, cooperation, competition may ripple outward long after 3i Atlas has faded from the sky. It's strange to think that a silent wanderer of rock and ice could hold such sway over our future. Yet here we are, standing at a fork in the road that has less to do with the object itself and more to do with us. 3i Atlas does not decide how we react. We do. And in that decision lie two futures, each as vivid as the other. In one future, we treat 3i Atlas as a prize to be claimed. Nations race to launch missions, to seize first images, first samples, first discoveries. The competition is fierce, budgets balloon, secrecy grows, information becomes fragmented, parceled out in press conferences designed to outshine rivals. The object is studied, yes, but the story is one of division, and while progress is made, it is slower, costlier, distorted by politics. What could have been a shared leap forward becomes a mirror of old rivalries, painted across the stars. This future is not far-fetched. History is full of it. The race to the moon, though inspiring, was also a contest of power. Cold War tensions drove achievements, but also left behind walls of distrust. 3i Atlas, if framed as a race, could easily repeat that cycle, or entangled with rivalry, discovery narrowed by competition. But there is another future. In this one, 3i Atlas is not a prize, but a challenge we meet together. A joint mission is proposed, funded by coalitions rather than individuals. Scientists from every corner of the globe contribute ideas. Data flows freely, shared as a common resource. No single nation claims ownership. Instead, humanity claims it collectively. The object becomes less about flags and more about footprints of understanding, etched into our shared history. That future is harder to imagine, perhaps, because unity has always been harder than rivalry. It requires trust. It requires patience. It requires setting aside the desire for prestige in favor of progress. And yet, if there were ever a time for unity, it is now. For an interstellar visitor reminds us that borders are human inventions. The object does not see Earth divided into nations. It sees only one sun, one system, one species staring upward. The choice between these two futures will not be made in a single moment. It will unfold in countless small decisions, funding meetings, policy briefings, mission designs, press releases. And yet, once the path is chosen, its momentum will carry us. Rivalry breeds more rivalry. Cooperation breeds more cooperation. The danger lies in thinking the choice doesn't matter, in assuming the outcome will be the same either way. It won't, because the story we tell ourselves shapes what comes next. If 3i Atlas is framed as a danger, our tools will be forged for defense. If it is framed as a prize, our tools will be forged for competition. But if it is framed as a shared wonder, our tools, our telescopes, our missions, our institutions may be forged for exploration, built not to divide, but to connect. This is the quiet power of symbols. They set tone, they guide direction, they influence generations. And 3i Atlas is already becoming one of the strongest symbols of our time. We cannot look at it without asking ourselves what it means, and what it means will depend on how we choose to interpret it. So which future is more likely? That depends not on the object, but on us. It depends on whether leaders and citizens alike can look past the thrill of competition to see the deeper prize: knowledge, perspective, unity. It depends on whether we recognize that the galaxy does not play favorites, that interstellar visitors will come and go regardless of who tries to own them. It depends on whether we understand that in the face of the cosmos, we are not rivals but kin. Perhaps this is the true test of 3i Atlas, not whether we can measure it, model it, or predict its path, but whether we can rise above our old instincts long enough to meet it as one. Because if we can, then the future it points to is luminous, a future where humanity begins to see itself not as fractured tribes, but as one species, ready at last to take its place in a universe full of wonders. And if we cannot, then 3i Atlas will still be studied, still be measured, still be catalogued, but its legacy will be smaller than it could have been. A footnote of rivalry instead of a chapter of unity, a missed chance to grow together, written in the sky for all to see. It is, in the end, a simple but profound choice: rivalry or unity, division or cooperation, fear or wonder. The object waits silently, indifferent to which path we choose. But for us, the choice could shape not just how we understand one comet, but how we understand ourselves. When people speak of 3i Atlas, it's easy to forget that this isn't just about one object. It's about a pattern. If one interstellar visitor can linger, then others will follow. If one piece of the galaxy can slip into our sun's embrace, then this will not be the last. The way we respond to 3i Atlas will set the precedent, the script we follow not just once, but again and again. That's why the fork in the road feels so heavy. Rivalry and unity aren't just temporary moods. They echo into the future. Imagine a world where every interstellar visitor becomes another battleground, each one wrapped in secrecy, claimed as a prize of national prestige. The discoveries would still come, but slowly, filtered through competition. Knowledge would be fractured, progress would be uneven, and the galaxy would come to us piece by piece, not as a shared inheritance, but as a contested frontier. Now imagine the other path. Imagine a world where every visitor is treated as common ground, a chance for humanity to step forward together, pooling resources, sharing data, combining imagination. Progress would accelerate, missions would be bigger, bolder, freer from the weight of rivalry. Knowledge would flow openly, not parceled out for advantage, but woven into a shared human narrative. In this future, the galaxy does not feel like a distant backdrop. It feels like a shared horizon. The difference between these two futures may seem abstract, but it is not. It shows up in the tools we build. In a world of rivalry, we build tools for control, for secrecy, for speed over depth. In a world of unity, we build tools for collaboration, for longevity, for exploration that is sustainable across generations. One path builds walls, the other builds bridges. And those bridges could stretch not only across Earth, but into the stars. Think of what that means for our relationship with the galaxy. Right now, we are infants peering out of a cradle. We see the stars, but we cannot reach them. We dream of other worlds, but we remain bound to our own. Objects like Three-Eye Atlas are our first visitors, our first taste of what it means to be part of something larger. How we treat them will shape how we treat the galaxy when it is no longer just visiting us, but when we begin to step into it ourselves. If we treat the galaxy as a contest, then our first journeys outward will be fueled by fear, by competition, by the hunger to be first. But if we treat it as a shared inheritance, then our first journeys outward may be fueled by wonder, by curiosity, by the hunger to learn together. That distinction could mean everything. It could decide whether the future of humanity among the stars is fractured or whole. And here is the irony. The galaxy itself is indifferent. It does not care whether we approach it with rivalry or unity. The comets will still drift. The stars will still burn. The visitors will still come. But for us, the choice changes everything, because the galaxy will shape us in return, reflecting the values we bring to it. Rivalry breeds suspicion. Unity breeds trust. And those seeds, planted now, will grow into the future we inherit. That's why astronomers speak of Three-Eye Atlas, not just in scientific terms, but in almost philosophical ones. They know the data matters, but they also know that the meaning we attach to the data matters just as much. A comet can be rock and ice, yes, but it can also be a symbol, a lesson, a turning point. And perhaps that is what makes Three-Eye Atlas different. Not that it is unique in the galaxy, but that it arrived at a moment when we are ready to ask what kind of species we want to be. The timing could not be more striking. Humanity stands at a crossroads already. Climate change, resource scarcity, political division, the challenges are immense. And yet, in the middle of all of this, the galaxy reminds us that we are part of something larger. A visitor drifts into our sky, silent but insistent, and suddenly our debates about unity versus rivalry are no longer abstract. They are written above us, glowing faintly in the darkness. And perhaps that's the real message here. Not that the galaxy is sending signals, but that its very presence demands interpretation. And in our interpretation lies our destiny, because how we choose to see Three-Eye Atlas as threat, as prize, or as shared wonder may determine not just how we react now, but how we will react when the galaxy comes knocking again. So, as Three-Eye Atlas nears Mars, with its 60% chance of the unexpected, perhaps the most unexpected thing is not what it will do, but what we will decide. Will we let rivalry define us, or will we choose unity and let this object mark the beginning of a new relationship with the stars, one where humanity steps forward together, not as fractured tribes, but as one species ready to embrace the cosmos? For all the models and mission plans, for all the policy debates and scientific conferences, there's another layer to this story, the quiet, personal one. The way Three-Eye Atlas is slipping into the lives of people who may never look through a telescope, who may never read a scientific paper, but who nonetheless find themselves glancing up at the night sky with a new sense of wonder. That's the power of a story written in the stars. It filters down into the lives of ordinary people. Parents telling their children at bedtime, "There's a visitor from another star in our sky tonight." Students in classrooms, wide-eyed as they realize the universe isn't just out there, but here, brushing against us. Couples walking at night, pointing at a faint glow and whispering about what it might mean. For those people, Three-Eye Atlas is not a puzzle of orbital mechanics. It is something simpler and perhaps deeper. It is a reminder that life is not confined to the routines of traffic, deadlines, and noise. That above the hum of daily life, the universe is still alive with mysteries. Mysteries close enough to be noticed, but vast enough to humble. And that reminder changes people, even if they don't become scientists, even if they never chase a career in space, they carry the awareness with them. That awareness makes them dream bigger, Ask more questions, imagine differently. And in that sense, 3i Atlas is not only shaping the future of astronomy, it is shaping the inner lives of millions. Think of how similar moments have done this before. When the first images of Earth from space came back, whole generations shifted their perspective. Borders seemed smaller, conflict seemed pettier, Earth seemed fragile, precious, worth protecting. Now imagine what it means for this generation to grow up with the knowledge that the solar system itself is not closed, that objects from other stars can wander in, that the universe is more restless and interconnected than we thought. That lesson will leave an imprint just as profound as the blue marble did decades ago. And it doesn't stop with awe. For some, the presence of 3i Atlas sparks unease, not fear of collision necessarily, but a subtler anxiety, the reminder that the universe is not predictable, that our sense of control is limited. For those people, 3i Atlas becomes a symbol not of wonder but of vulnerability, and even that has its effect, pushing them to value preparation, resilience, cooperation in the face of uncertainty. This duality, awe and unease, curiosity and caution, is what makes 3i Atlas such a powerful cultural event, because no matter what angle people see it from, they cannot ignore it. It touches their sense of self, their sense of belonging. It reminds them in different ways that Earth is part of a larger stage. And here is something even subtler. It creates a shared conversation. Across cultures, across languages, across continents, people are speaking about the same thing. Whether in coffee shops or classrooms, news broadcasts or online forums, the name 3i Atlas is spoken, and in speaking it, we connect. For a brief moment, divided though we may be, we share the same mystery. That shared mystery is rare in a fractured world. We disagree about politics, about economics, about borders, but when we look up, the sky is the same. And when a stranger arrives in that sky, we all share the same questions. What is it? Why is it here? What does it mean? Those questions are not bound by culture or nation. They are human questions. And that may be 3i Atlas's quietest, most profound gift, the chance to remind us that we are one species under one sky, that for all our divisions, we are united by the mysteries we face together. This doesn't mean unity will be automatic. It doesn't erase differences or conflicts, but it does plant a seed, and seeds matter, because over time they grow into stories, into movements, into identities. And as people everywhere find themselves touched by this visitor, even in small ways, the seed of we grows stronger than the seed of me. So yes, 3i Atlas is a scientific anomaly. Yes, it is a political question. Yes, it is a symbol of possible futures. But it is also something much simpler, a story ordinary people tell to each other. And in that story, in that shared moment of wonder or unease, lies a reminder that the universe is not silent, and neither are we. Perhaps that is the real, unexpected outcome of this object. Not just that it has unsettled models or challenged astronomers, but that it has slipped quietly into the imaginations of millions, reshaping how they see the night sky and how they see themselves within it. If 3i Atlas has already made its way into the quiet conversations of people around the world, what happens next is almost inevitable. It becomes a story that will linger long after the object itself has passed, no matter what trajectory it ultimately takes. Because that is how humans have always dealt with the unknown, not just by measuring it, but by weaving it into myth, art, and culture. Think of comets in history. To ancient eyes, a comet was not a ball of ice and dust. It was a messenger, a sword, an omen. It brought news from the gods, warnings of disaster, whispers of change. The science behind comets has advanced, but the instinct to turn the sky into story remains. And with 3i Atlas, that instinct is alive again. Already, artists sketch its glowing arc across the heavens. Poets write lines about visitors from other suns. Filmmakers imagine what it means for something to cross the gulf of interstellar space and find its way here. For them, the science is only a starting point. The rest is imagination, and imagination travels further than any spacecraft ever could. And why not? Because 3i Atlas is rich with symbolism. It is a visitor, a traveler from beyond, brushing close enough to remind us of the wider cosmos. It is unpredictable, slipping past models, refusing easy answers, reminding us that knowledge is provisional. It is beautiful, glowing faintly yet insistently, a reminder that even in darkness, something mysterious can shine. These are not just scientific facts, they are story seeds, and story seeds grow in every culture they touch. Imagine a child in one corner of the world hearing about 3i Atlas in the news. For them, it may plant a dream of becoming an astronomer. Imagine another child in another corner hearing the same story, but imagining not telescopes but canvases filled with cosmic color. The same object, two very different futures, but both rooted in story. History tells us these stories endure. Halley's Comet has been appearing in records for millennia, tied to emperors and battles, to births and deaths. Even as science explained its nature, the myths did not vanish. They simply transformed. Halley's is now both a subject of orbital mechanics and of art, literature, and cultural memory. The same will be true of 3i Atlas. Even if it fades, even if it fragments, its name will not. It will echo in books, in songs, in paintings, in the whispered retellings of people who lived through its passage. And in this way, 3i Atlas will outlive itself, because stories are more enduring than orbits. Ice and dust will scatter, equations will be updated, but myths endure, and 3i Atlas, like every great mystery, is destined to become myth. But here's the curious part. In our time, myths no longer live only in oral traditions or ancient texts. They live in digital archives, in shared videos, in online conversations. That means the story of 3i Atlas will not just be passed down through generations the way comets once were. It will be preserved in countless forms, spread instantly across the globe. The myths of this visitor are being written not in stone, but in servers. And that means they may last as long as our technology does, a digital echo of a cosmic wanderer. For future generations, the legacy of 3i Atlas will be more than numbers in astronomy journals. It will be remembered as the moment when humanity collectively lifted its gaze, when an interstellar traveler became part of the human imagination. It may inspire myths of guardianship, of warning, of cosmic connection. It may inspire art that future historians trace back to this very moment. It may even inspire movements, philosophies, or new ways of thinking about our place in the universe. Because when we face the unknown, we do more than measure it. We interpret it, and in that interpretation we reveal ourselves. The story of 3i Atlas will not only be about the object, it will be about us and how we chose to see it. Did we see it as threat, as wonder, as symbol of unity, or as mirror of our divisions? Whatever story we choose will say as much about humanity as about the object itself. And so, in a way, 3i Atlas has already succeeded in reshaping us, not because of what it is, but because of what we have made of it. A visitor became a story, and the story became part of who we are. And whether it stays in our solar system or drifts away, that story will remain. A marker in time, etched into human culture, a reminder that once the stars sent a traveler our way, and for a moment we all looked up together. Centuries from now, long after the dust of today's headlines has settled, what will 3i Atlas mean to those who come after us? Will they remember it as a faint glow in old records, a footnote in astronomy textbooks, or will it stand as something greater, a moment when humanity began to see itself differently? Every generation inherits the myths, achievements, and mistakes of those before, And when historians, storytellers, and scientists of the future look back at this century, they will see a time of profound tension. A world connected yet divided, capable of wonders yet weighed down by crises. And amid that tension, they will see a visitor, one that arrived quietly, indifferent to our struggles, yet impossible to ignore. If humanity takes the path of rivalry, perhaps they will look back with regret. They will say, here was a chance to unite, and we squandered it. They will see 3i Atlas not as a catalyst for progress, but as another missed opportunity, one more symbol of our divisions. In that telling, it becomes a cautionary tale, a story told to remind future generations of the dangers of letting fear and pride blind us to wonder. But if humanity takes the path of unity, the story changes. Then, 3i Atlas becomes a beginning, the spark of something larger. They will say, here was when we first recognized ourselves as one species beneath one sky. Here was when we learned that the universe is not empty, but full of unexpected visitors. Here was when we turned our gaze outward, not as rivals, but as explorers. In that telling, 3i Atlas will not be remembered simply for what it was, but for what it inspired. Perhaps future generations will point to joint missions launched in its wake, collaborations that bridged nations, technologies that pushed us further into space. Perhaps they will mark it as the first domino in a chain of discoveries that led, eventually, to humanity's steps on other worlds. There's a striking possibility in this vision, that 3i Atlas may be remembered not because of its own nature, but because of the timing of its arrival. The early 21st century is a fragile moment. We are advanced enough to dream of the stars, but still divided enough to fall short of reaching them. A visitor like this reminds us of both truths at once, how far we have come and how far we still must go. Future civilizations may look back and say, that was the century when humanity first glimpsed the wider universe knocking at its door. And even if the object itself fades, even if its path eventually carries it away from us, the legacy could endure. Because legacy is not about permanence in the sky. It is about permanence in memory. And memory has a way of outlasting even the brightest stars. Imagine an academy of the far future, teaching young students about the milestones of human history. Among the tales of ancient cities, revolutions, and the birth of the digital age, they might hear of the moment when a faint traveller from beyond the stars drifted close, and how it forced their ancestors to ask, for the first time in earnest, what does it mean to be human in a galactic neighbourhood? That question could echo across centuries, shaping not just science, but philosophy, art, and identity. This is the power of perspective. We often see ourselves as small, confined to a single planet, but moments like this stretch the boundaries of that vision. They remind us that Earth is not isolated. It is part of a web of cosmic motion, a system touched and retouched by interstellar wanderers. For future generations, 3i Atlas may stand as the symbol of that realization. The moment when we began to take our first steps into seeing ourselves not as earthbound creatures, but as participants in a universe alive with motion. Of course, there is no guarantee. The story could fade. It could be buried in archives, its legacy forgotten as greater events take the stage. But even that possibility has meaning, because if it is forgotten, it will not be because it was unworthy of memory. It will be because humanity moved so far beyond it that its mystery was swallowed by greater wonders, by new voyages, new discoveries, new horizons. And in that sense, even being forgotten is a kind of triumph. Either way, 3i Atlas will leave its mark, whether as a catalyst remembered or as a quiet spark overshadowed by what came after. It will be part of the story of how we grew. Because every civilization needs its firsts, its first steps, its first symbols, its first encounters with the unknown. And perhaps for us, in this century, 3i Atlas is one of those firsts. So when future eyes look back, they may not see just an object of dust and ice. They may see a mirror reflecting the moment when humanity began to realize that its story was no longer confined to one world, but was already unfolding on a cosmic scale. For all the words written, for all the debates sparked, and for all the observations gathered, the truth is this: 3i Atlas remains an enigma. We know just enough to be unsettled, but not enough to be certain. And perhaps that is its greatest gift, to remind us that knowledge is always incomplete, that mystery is never fully banished. Take its size, for example. Estimates shift with each new dataset. At one moment, it seems no larger than a mountain. At another, it could span tens of kilometers, with fragments trailing in ways that confuse even the sharpest instruments. Its brightness fluctuates, but not in the clean, predictable way comets usually do. Some nights it seems to flare, as if reacting, and then it dims again, fading into near invisibility. Astronomers plot graphs, adjust models, run simulations, and yet something doesn't add up. Then there is its trajectory. Yes, we can chart its general path. Yes, gravity still plays its role. But the way 3i Atlas bends, drifts, slows, or accelerates at subtle points refuses to fit neatly into equations. Outgassing could explain part of it, but not all. Solar pressure may account for some drift, but not in this pattern. And so each time new numbers are fed into the models, the margin of error expands instead of shrinks. It is a reminder that our tools, as powerful as they are, still stumble when faced with the truly unknown. Even its surface remains a puzzle. Is it fractured rock sheathed in ice, or something stranger, porous, sponge-like, with voids that distort its spin? Some readings suggest a crust that absorbs more light than expected. Others hint at reflective patches bright enough to rival small moons. When astronomers combine these clues, the result is not clarity, but contradiction. Each observation answers one question and raises three more. And perhaps the strangest puzzle of all, it's silence. Not literal silence, of course. We do not expect messages, signals, or signs of intention, but the silence of its arrival. Why now? Why here? The galaxy is vast. The odds of such an object wandering directly into our planetary neighborhood, twice in such short succession after Oumuamua, are astonishing, too astonishing for some. And while caution keeps scientists from leaping to conclusions, the timing lingers like a whisper. What are the chances? These questions will not vanish when 3i Atlas fades from view. They will linger in textbooks, in lecture halls, in the late-night musings of astronomers staring at blinking cursor lines in their research papers. Because mysteries like this are not solved quickly. They take decades, they ripple across generations, and in the meantime they become sparks that ignite new instruments, new missions, new ideas. That is why 3i Atlas is more than just an object. It is a challenge. It dares us to refine our tools, to sharpen our theories, to accept that the universe is more unpredictable than we are comfortable admitting. It pushes us not only to look harder, but to think differently. And that, more than any answer it could provide, may be its true legacy. Because here is the paradox. If we ever solved every mystery, if we ever reached a point where the universe offered no more questions, what would drive us forward? The unknown is not a barrier, it is the engine. And 3i Atlas, with all its confusions and contradictions, is pure fuel. Perhaps that is why astronomers speak of it with such a mix of frustration and awe. It defies them, yes. It refuses easy answers, yes. But in doing so, it keeps them awake, keeps them striving, keeps them human. Because to be human is to live in the space between knowledge and mystery, always reaching, always questioning. So when we say that 3i Atlas carries a 60% chance of the unexpected, perhaps what we are really saying is this: the unexpected is inevitable. Whether in its brightness, its orbit, its composition, or its very presence, something will elude us. And that elusiveness will not be a failure of science, but the essence of science. The reason to keep watching, keep asking, keep wondering. In the end, 3i Atlas may never reveal all its secrets. It may fade, fragment, or vanish into the background of memory, but its questions will remain, and those questions will be the compass that guides us forward into sharper telescopes, deeper missions, bolder theories, into the endless chase of knowledge, fueled by the endless presence of mystery. And isn't that the most fitting outcome of all? That an object which drifts into our skies from another star does not answer us, but instead hands us back our own questions, multiplied. A reminder that the cosmos is not a puzzle to be solved once and for all, but a conversation to be continued forever. When astronomers speak of the universe, they often use the language of data, magnitudes, trajectories, velocities, compositions, numbers precise enough to strip away uncertainty. But behind the numbers is something less measurable, a sense that the universe is not silent, but speaking, not in words, not in signals we can decode like language, but in events, in appearances, in mysteries like 3i Atlas. What if each visitor is a kind of question the cosmos poses to us? Oumuamua asked, "What would you do if something truly alien in origin passed by too quickly to study?" 2i Borisov asked, "What would you learn if a comet from another star gave you a fleeting, almost ordinary glimpse?" And now 3 Atlas asks, "What happens when a visitor does not behave as expected, when its path bends toward permanence, when its behavior is unsettled enough to unsettle us?" These are not accidents of rock and ice. They are chapters in a conversation older and larger than humanity itself. The universe is not alive in the way we are, but it is alive with change, alive with reminders that we are part of its ongoing story. To treat 3i Atlas only as a data point is to miss that larger truth. It is not just an object to measure, it is an invitation to listen. And when we listen, something remarkable happens. We respond. We send up new telescopes, build new instruments, craft new theories. In a way, those are our words back to the cosmos. The universe speaks in comets, and we reply in equations. The universe sends us anomalies, and we reply in missions. This back and forth is slow, patient, stretched across centuries, but it is dialogue nonetheless. That idea reshapes how we see ourselves. Too often we imagine humanity as isolated, alone in a vast emptiness. But 3i Atlas is a reminder that we are not alone in motion. The galaxy moves around us, through us, into us. We are part of a dynamic exchange, a system that stretches far beyond Earth. To be human in this light is not to be silent. It is to be one voice among many, contributing to the ongoing song of the cosmos. And here is where the mystery becomes deeply personal. Once you realize you are part of this conversation, you cannot unhear it. Every star becomes a question. Every comet becomes a sentence. Every strange signal or unexplained flare becomes punctuation in a dialogue that will never end. For ordinary people, this is less about data and more about belonging, because belonging is what conversation gives us. A sense that we are not passive observers, but participants. So perhaps that is what unsettles us most about 3i Atlas. It is not only that it defies prediction, but that it calls us into response. It demands more of us, more curiosity, more imagination, more humility. It refuses to be just background noise, insisting instead on being heard. And once heard, it cannot be forgotten. This raises a question almost as profound as any equation. What does it mean for a species to become aware that the universe is speaking to it? For millennia, humans thought the sky was fixed, the stars eternal. Then we learned of motion, of orbits, of expansion. Now, with visitors like this, we learn something else, that the galaxy is not a distant stage, but a partner in dialogue. That awareness could change everything. Imagine future generations growing up with this perspective. They will not see themselves as cut off, but as participants in an ongoing story. They will inherit telescopes as tools of listening, spacecraft as tools of response. For them, the sky will not be silent. It will be alive with conversation, and their lives will be richer, more connected because of it. Perhaps that is why 3i Atlas matters most, not because of what it is, but because of what it reminds us to be: curious, attentive, willing to listen, willing to respond. If the cosmos is speaking, then our role is not to master it, not to silence it, but to engage with it, as listeners, learners, and participants in its endless mystery. And so, as 3i Atlas drifts closer to Mars, with its 60% chance of something unexpected, the real unexpected moment may already be here, not in the object, but in us, in the realization that we are not bystanders in a silent universe, but voices in a cosmic dialogue that will echo long after this visitor has gone. If 3i Atlas is a question, and our telescope's models and missions are an answer, then we must ask something even more profound. What does this make us? Not just as individuals, but as a species. What does it mean to be human in a universe that is, in its own way, always speaking? For most of history, our identity has been bound by Earth. We called ourselves farmers, sailors, warriors, builders, all titles rooted in the soil beneath our feet. Even as science advanced, we carried the assumption that we were creatures of one planet, fated to live and die within its thin shell of atmosphere. The cosmos was backdrop, stage, theatre, but never something we thought of as dialogue. 3i Atlas complicates that view, because when something arrives from beyond the stars, and when it refuses to play by the expected rules, it forces us to expand the boundaries of who we are. We are not just Earth dwellers anymore. We are participants in a galactic exchange. Even if our spacecraft never touch it, even if our probes never catch up, our awareness of it already changes us. To know that we can listen, to know that we can respond, is enough to shift identity. This shift is subtle, but immense. It suggests that humanity's true role is not simply to survive, but to interpret. To be the species that listens when the universe speaks and replies with questions of its own. That role does not belong to one nation or culture, but to all of us together. And if we can recognize it, then we begin to step into a new kind of identity. Not fractured, not defined only by borders or tribes, but defined by our shared place in a larger conversation. But here is where the unease slips in again. To see ourselves as participants means accepting that we are not the center of the story. For millennia, we placed Earth at the heart of the cosmos, then the sun, then our galaxy. Each step outward humbled us. 3i Atlas continues that pattern. It whispers that we are not hosts, but one voice among countless voices in an endless dialogue. For some, that thought is thrilling. For others, it is unsettling. Yet isn't humility part of wisdom? To recognize that we are not alone in motion, not unique in our smallness, is not to diminish ourselves, but to enlarge our perspective. It means that our achievements, our dreams, our struggles are part of something grander. It means that when we launch a telescope, we are not just studying, we are answering. When we wonder aloud at the skies, we are not just dreaming, we are participating. That identity is richer, deeper, and more lasting than any title we have ever given ourselves before. And once we accept this, the implications are vast. Education changes. Students learn not only math and science, but the humility and wonder of being in dialogue with a universe alive with questions. Politics changes. Leaders recognize that rivalry cannot be the default mode of a species that must face mysteries larger than any border. Even art changes. paintings, music, stories infused with the knowledge that our place is not confined to Earth but stretches outward, into the endless. What emerges is not just a new story of the cosmos, but a new story of us, a species that sees itself as listener, responder, participant, a species that no longer measures itself only by what it conquers, but by what it understands. That shift in identity could be as important as fire, as writing, as electricity, a transformation that ripples across centuries. Of course, some will resist this shift. Some will insist that the cosmos is indifferent, that there is nothing to listen to, nothing to respond to, only objects to be catalogued. And in a way, they are right. The universe does not intend in the way we intend. It does not choose to speak. But perhaps the deeper truth is this: dialogue does not require intention. It requires exchange. And exchange is happening whether we like it or not. 3i Atlas drifts in, we measure it, we imagine it, we build around it. That is dialogue, no matter how you define it. And so the choice is ours: deny the dialogue or embrace it. If we deny it, we remain small, confined, endlessly circling our own questions without daring to expand. If we embrace it, we step into a larger identity, not as masters of the universe, but as participants in its endless story. That embrace does not make us less, it makes us more. Perhaps then, the true lesson of 3i Atlas is not about its orbit, its size, or its strange behavior. Perhaps the true lesson is about us, about what kind of species we are becoming. One that listens, one that responds, one that understands that to be human is not to stand apart from the cosmos, but to belong within it as part of its living conversation. Up to now, we've spoken of 3i Atlas as a visitor, as if it were an actor arriving on our stage. But perhaps that's not quite right. Perhaps we are the actors, and the stage has always been set by the universe itself. And here's the most radical thought of all: maybe the universe, in its silence, requires us. It sounds strange at first. After all, the stars burned long before humans ever opened their eyes. Galaxies collided, comets wandered, black holes devoured, all without witnesses. Why would the cosmos need us? It does not depend on us for its existence. It will continue long after we are gone. But here's the key: without us, or something like us, it has no witness, no awareness, no interpretation. The grandest events would unfold in perfect silence, unseen and unremembered. And that changes the picture. Because if awareness is rare, then perhaps our role is not just to survive, but to serve as the universe's way of knowing itself. In that light, 3i Atlas is not just an object drifting in. It is a piece of the cosmos presenting itself for recognition, as if testing whether its own creation has developed eyes sharp enough to notice. We are the cosmos looking back at itself, and each visitor is an invitation to deepen that reflection. This is not science in the strict sense, but philosophy woven through science. And yet, it is a perspective many astronomers and thinkers quietly share. They know that equations alone cannot capture the weight of wonder. They know that behind the data is something deeper. The fact that the data matters only because we are here to perceive it. 3i Atlas has no story until we give it one, and by giving it a story, we make it part of the universe's awareness of itself. If this is true, then humanity's role becomes more urgent. Our telescopes are not just instruments of science, they are instruments of meaning. Our missions are not just about data, they are about recognition. To turn away, to ignore, to refuse to listen, that would be to deny the cosmos its own reflection. But to look, to wonder, to study, that is to complete the loop, to allow the universe to hear itself through us. And maybe that is why visitors like 3i Atlas stir something so deep in us. It's not only curiosity, it's not only the thrill of the unknown, it's the sense that when we notice, something more than science is happening. Awareness is completing itself. The silence of drifting dust and ice is given voice not because the object speaks, but because we are here to answer. Think about it. Without us, a comet is just a rock. With us, it becomes a story, a symbol, a lesson. Without us, the flare of a star is just energy released. With us, it becomes inspiration, poetry, knowledge. The universe does not need us to exist, but it may need us to mean. And that is no small role. That is a role large enough to shape civilizations. So when people ask what 3i Atlas really is, maybe the most profound answer is this: it is a mirror not of itself, but of us, of our ability to notice, to interpret, to turn raw mystery into meaning. And in that sense, it is not only a question posed by the cosmos, it is also a test. Will we live up to the role of interpreters, or will we turn away? This interpretation may not comfort everyone. Some may find it arrogant, the idea that the universe needs us. But perhaps arrogance is not the right word. Perhaps it is responsibility. Not responsibility in the sense of control, but in the sense of stewardship. If we are the eyes, the ears, the storytellers of the cosmos, then our responsibility is to keep noticing, keep wondering, keep telling, because without that, the silence returns. And maybe, just maybe, that is why visitors like 3i Atlas keep coming. Not because they choose to, but because the universe itself is restless. It refuses to let us forget. It keeps offering us new mysteries, new invitations, new mirrors in which to see ourselves. Because the dialogue is not optional. It is built into the very fabric of existence. So when we say the universe is speaking, what we really mean is this: it speaks through events, through objects, through mysteries like 3i Atlas, and it waits for us to reply. Not with certainty, not with final answers, but with the simple act of paying attention. To be human, then, is to answer the universe with awareness. To be human is to complete the silence with story. And maybe, just maybe, that is why this visitor feels so important. Because for a fleeting moment, we are reminded that we are not just living in the cosmos. We are helping it know itself. It is tempting, in the face of a vast universe, to lean fully into humility. After all, what are we, really? One small species clinging to a thin layer of atmosphere on a modest planet circling an ordinary star tucked into the edge of one galaxy among trillions. From that perspective, humility seems obvious. We are insignificant, a flicker, a whisper. If 3i Atlas vanished tomorrow, the cosmos would not notice. Stars would still burn, galaxies would still spin, time would still unfold. And yet, the other truth presses against that humility, responsibility. Because even if the cosmos does not notice us, we notice it. Even if the stars do not care, we care. That act of caring, that act of noticing creates meaning, and meaning is not small. It may be, in fact, the rarest and most precious thing the universe contains. Dust and energy are everywhere. Awareness is not. This is the paradox of humanity's place in the cosmos. On one hand, we are infinitesimal. On the other, we may be essential. Essential not for the cosmos's survival, but for its reflection. Without us, or something like us, the story of the universe is incomplete. It is a grand performance with no audience, a book written with no reader. With us, the performance is witnessed, the book is read, and suddenly it becomes more than silence. 3i Atlas is a perfect example of this paradox. To itself, it is just matter, moving along a path shaped by physics. But to us, it is symbol, mystery, catalyst. We give it a name, a narrative, a place in our history. We make it larger than itself, and in doing so, we remind ourselves of the strange truth. Even the smallest species can confer meaning upon the largest stage. But this role comes with tension. Humility whispers, do not overestimate yourself. Responsibility whispers, do not underestimate yourself. Between those two whispers lies the balance we must learn to walk. lean too far into humility, and we risk fatalism, the belief that our actions do not matter because we are small. Lean too far into responsibility, and we risk arrogance, the belief that the universe revolves around us. The truth is in between. We matter, but not because we are central. We matter because we are aware, and awareness carries responsibility. To turn away, to stop listening, to neglect the mysteries around us, would be to waste what is rarest about us. That is why visitors like 3i Atlas feel like tests. They force us to remember both sides of the paradox. They remind us that we are small enough to be humbled, but aware enough to be crucial. They remind us that significance is not about size, but about perception. This paradox is not new. Philosophers have wrestled with it for centuries. Blaise Pascal once wrote of the terrifying silence of infinite space, and yet also of the dignity that comes from thought. Man is but a reed, the weakest in nature, he said, but he is a thinking reed. 3i Atlas brings that insight into our century. It whispers the same reminder. Fragile, yes. Fleeting, yes, but aware. And awareness changes everything. So how do we live with this paradox? Perhaps the answer is not to resolve it, but to embrace it. To live with the humility that keeps us grounded and the responsibility that keeps us reaching. To let humility remind us of our place and responsibility remind us of our role. That balance may be the essence of wisdom in a cosmic age. Think of it this way. Humility keeps us from assuming that 3i Atlas is here for us. Responsibility reminds us that we are here for it, to witness, to wonder, to make meaning. Humility reminds us that we are not central to the cosmos. Responsibility reminds us that we may be central to the cosmos becoming conscious of itself. Together, those truths are not a contradiction, but a harmony. And perhaps that harmony is what 3i Atlas symbolizes most of all. Not just the science of dust and trajectories, not just the possibility of the unexpected, but the reminder that we are living in paradox, small but meaningful, fragile but aware, humble but responsible. That paradox does not diminish us, it defines us. So as we watch this visitor drift nearer to Mars, as we puzzle over its unpredictable behavior, as we wonder about the 60% chance of something unexpected, maybe the most important thing is not what happens next, but how we choose to see ourselves in relation to it. If we can embrace the paradox, if we can hold both humility and responsibility together, then perhaps we are already passing the test. Because in the end, the real significance of 3i Atlas may not lie in its mysteries, but in the mirror it holds up to us. A mirror in which we see both our smallness and our importance, and realize that both can be true at once. Until now, much of the conversation around 3i Atlas has been framed by its transience. We speak of it as a visitor, an interloper passing through, a fleeting chance to glimpse something from beyond. But what if that premise is wrong? What if 3i Atlas is not merely passing through? What if it stays? Already, models have whispered of the possibility. Its trajectory is not simple, not the clean escape path we expected from an interstellar object. Subtle variations, perturbations, unexplained shifts. They suggest that the sun's gravity may yet hold it. If that is true, then for the first time humanity may live alongside a permanent outsider, an interstellar traveler turned neighbor. Imagine that. Our maps of the solar system would never be the same. No longer just planets, moons, asteroids, and comets born here, but an adopted body, a cosmic immigrant. School children learning about the solar system would memorize its name alongside Jupiter and Saturn. Our descendants would look up at the sky and know that not everything circling the sun was born in its light. Something from the deep unknown became part of our home, and that permanence changes everything. A fleeting visitor can be ignored, dismissed as anomaly. A permanent resident demands recognition. It would no longer be just an object of study. It would be part of our identity. Just as Earth's moon has shaped our tides, our myths, our calendars, 3i Atlas could shape our imagination for centuries to come. But permanence also sharpens the paradox. On the one hand, its staying would humble us further. It would prove that our solar system is not sealed, not unique, not untouched. It would remind us that the boundaries we drew around our space are porous. We are not isolated. We are open, vulnerable to the arrivals of the wider cosmos. That is humility. On the other hand, its staying would deepen our responsibility, because if 3i Atlas remains, then we must live with it, study it, understand it, perhaps even protect it. For the first time, the stewardship of our neighborhood would include something not born here, and in caring for it, we would be forced to redefine what it means to belong. This is not without precedent. Earth itself is full of stories of outsiders who became part of the fabric of life, plants, animals, even human cultures migrating, colliding, and reshaping one another. In each case, permanence transformed identity. 3i Atlas could do the same on a cosmic scale. It could push us to see ourselves not just as children of Earth, not just as citizens of the solar system, but as members of a community that includes voices from beyond. But permanence also brings unease. What if it changes us in ways we cannot predict? What if its strange behaviors are not temporary anomalies, but long-term patterns that destabilize Mars or asteroids or even Earth itself? What if its mass distribution or gravitational influence grows? To adopt something is to take on its mysteries, its risks as well as its gifts. Are we ready for that? And yet perhaps that is precisely the test. To embrace humility without paralysis. To embrace responsibility without arrogance. To accept that to live in a cosmos open to arrivals is to live with both wonder and uncertainty. And to do so not with fear, but with resilience. Think of the stories future generations might tell if 3i Atlas remains. Tales not of a passing shadow, but of a permanent mirror in the sky. A reminder that the universe is not silent, that it reaches in, reshaping our neighborhood, reminding us that belonging is never fixed. Imagine poets writing of it as the stranger star, artists painting it as the adopted child of the sun. Imagine scientists dedicating centuries of study to unlock its secrets, each discovery deepening the dialogue. What would that permanence mean for us, psychologically? Perhaps it would normalize the interstellar. No longer a singular shock, but a reminder that visitors can become neighbors, that the line between ours and theirs is thin. Perhaps it would soften the human fear of the unknown. After all, once you live beside the unknown long enough, it ceases to be stranger. It becomes family. And maybe that is the greatest transformation of all. If 3i Atlas stays, then the cosmos is no longer something that only passes through us. It is something that remains with us. It becomes part of our story in a way that cannot be erased. And in that permanence, we might finally learn that humility and responsibility are not opposites. They are companions. To be humble is to recognize that we are not alone. To be responsible is to recognize that once we are not alone, we must live well with what arrives. 3. Atlas may never know it has become part of our home, but we will. And in knowing, our identity will shift forever. If 3i Atlas stays, or if it vanishes back into the dark, either way, its presence has already done something irreversible. It has changed us. Because now we can no longer pretend that the cosmos is far away, quiet or indifferent. It is near, it is restless, it is alive with mystery. And whether for a season or for centuries, 3i Atlas has pulled us into a dialogue that will not end. the paradox of our place remains, small and fragile, yet crucial in awareness, humble before the vastness, yet responsible as interpreters. Visitors like 3i Atlas remind us that our task is not to master the cosmos, but to listen to it, to notice, to carry its questions forward into meaning. That is no small task. It is perhaps the greatest responsibility imaginable. And isn't that, in the end, what makes this story so powerful? Not the numbers in orbital models, not even the strange behaviors or the whispers of unpredictability. What makes it powerful is the way it forces us to ask, what kind of species are we becoming? Will we be one that turns away, insisting the universe has nothing to say? Or will we be one that listens, even when the voice is subtle, even when the message is unclear? Because listening is not weakness. Listening is courage. It is the courage to admit that we do not know, and the courage to allow mystery to change us. In that way, 3i Atlas has already spoken, not with words, but with its very arrival. It has said, "You are not alone in motion. You are not sealed off. You are part of something larger, whether you accept it or not." And in answering, in giving it a name, in turning telescopes toward it, in crafting models and questions and stories, we have replied, "We hear you." That simple exchange, more than any data point, may be the true significance of this moment, for in it we step fully into our role as participants in the cosmos's unfolding story. Perhaps then, the final lesson of 3i Atlas is not about the object itself, but about us, about our willingness to remain open, to let wonder remain wonder instead of rushing to closure, to let mystery shape us instead of fearing it, to let humility and responsibility walk hand in hand. Future generations may look back at this moment not for what 3i Atlas turned out to be, but for what we became in response. Did we choose fear or curiosity? Did we choose silence or dialogue? Did we choose arrogance or humility joined with responsibility? These are the choices that will define us long after this visitor is gone. And so the story continues. The cosmos will send more questions, more visitors will drift in, more mysteries will unfold. Each one will be an invitation to listen, to notice, to respond. Each one will ask us again, who are you becoming? Perhaps the truest answer is this: we are becoming a species that listens, a species that responds, a species that understands that to live in the cosmos is not only to survive, but to participate in its story. And if we can hold on to that truth, then maybe, just maybe, we are passing the test. So tonight, as 3i Atlas drifts silently in the dark beyond Mars, pause for a moment, step outside, look up and remember, you are part of this. You are not apart from the universe. You are within it, and it is within you. The dialogue continues, not only in telescopes and data, but in the very act of your wondering. And perhaps that is the real gift of 3i Atlas. Not certainty, not answers, but wonder. Wonder that stretches across time, across cultures, across the entire planet. Wonder that reminds us that the universe is not finished speaking, and neither are we finished listening. The visitor will go, or it will stay, but either way, the story remains. And the next time the cosmos whispers, in the form of a comet, a signal, a flicker of light, we will be ready to answer.